On this episode of the Cover 4 podcast, the guys look at the top quarterback prospects in the upcoming 2023 NFL Draft. Stick around for more. Welcome to the Cover 4 podcast. I'm Nolan, that's Jeff, that is Luca. No Bradshaw today, but that is important because we're going to discuss Bradshaw's quarterback rankings ahead of the 2023 NFL Draft. This has been, kind of the big conversation of late. I do think it's a really nice draft. There's, some solid position groups like the corners, which I think we'll talk about. The receivers are okay. The running backs, of course, led by Bijan Robinson. But the quarterbacks is where it all kind of starts with. And there's been so much flip-flopping at the top. It felt for the longest time it was Bryce Young. Once Carolina traded up to get the number one pick, all of a sudden it's CJ Stroud. But let's go through Bradshaw's rankings first, and then I'll swing over to you, Luca, and you tell me what you think of Bradshaw's rankings, what you disagree with. So he has Bryce Young at number 1, Stroud at number 2, Anthony Richardson, who's been rising up boards, at number 3, Will Levis, 4. That seems to be the consistent number 4 pretty much of everybody. Hendon Hooker, the Tennessee quarterback, coming off a torn ACL at 5. But he had a keynote here. The top 2 are the only guys who are worth going in the top 10. And he says, I don't want Richardson to go to a team that is going to expect him to play right away. I know you were coming at him for not including Tanner McKee in there. As well. But so Luca, what do you agree with and disagree with Bradshaw? And then where does maybe Tanner McKee fit in for you? Because I know there are some analysts out there. I know Mike Renner of PFF, he's always been high on McKee. But what are your thoughts on the quarterbacks?
I agree with the statement. None of them should go in the top 10. Now, I think they could end up in the top 10 for a team like Detroit or Seattle that have a multiple first round picks and they can just afford to reach on, one of those guys. But if you're a team that doesn't need a QB and you're in the top 10, I agree with Brad. I don't think, they're a top 10. Other than Stroud and Young, I'm basing it off the other 3. I love Bryce Young. He has tremendous arm talent. I've just always been a CJ Stroud guy. I just like what he can. He's more of a prototypical pocket passer. Maybe I'm a little old school, and I'm only 23 years old, so it's like why, right? But Bryce Young's tremendous. He's so talented. Every time I watch his film, it's breathtaking. But I don't know. I just got feeling. I just like CJ Stroud. I just like his frame. I like his pocket poise. I like his accuracy. I just like what he could do, regardless of who you get. I think if I was drafting and I'm the Houston Texans, and one of those quarterbacks go off number 1, I'm more than happy taking whoever falls to me at number 2. It's not we're splitting hairs here. I just like CJ Stroud just a little bit more, but Bryce Young is a tremendous talent. So with Brad having him 1, I have no problem with that at all. I think Richardson. I'm not a huge Levis guy. I'm really not. I think he has great arm talent, but I just don't think he has it. If that makes sense, right? Like the other 2, when you look at the other 2, you're like, these guys are going to change a franchise. I don't see that in Levis. Richardson, on the other hand, I think everything has to work out for him. Like if everything works out, and you can say that for all these quarterbacks, right? But if he can land in a system where, they coach him properly, they don't force him like Brad said, which I agree with, and maybe he starts in a year or 2, I think he could be probably the steal of the draft in a way, because he's got all the intangibles. He's got the arm talent. He's athletic. He can do all these things. He's just got to work a little bit on his touch. So that will happen at the next level. Like the coaches will work on that with him. So I agree. I don't think anybody should trade up for Richardson. Like if, I don't know, like a team like Washington, let's just say they go and they trade everything, picks, and they go for Richardson. I don't think that's necessarily smart. But a team like Detroit or Seattle that have multiple first-round picks, like I said in another podcast, they're basically free first-round picks because you didn't think the Rams were going to be that bad, and you didn't think the Broncos were going to be that bad, and here they are. They're in the top 10. It's a free pick. You could afford to do that. So those are the only 2 teams I think should go for them. But again, it's a good QB class. So teams see this and it's like candy, guys. When you see guys, it's like, oh, I can't miss on this. I can't. He's a quarterback. If he's just not your guy, he's not your guy. And I wouldn't reach for guys like that. So the top two for sure. And Tanner McKee, man, I just like him. The only reason why I like him, and there's a key stat, is because at Stanford, I have it right here, his average career throw time was 2.49. And I really like that because sometimes when you look at these big-time players, they got the best offensive line, they got the best wide receivers, and they're standing there, and it's easy to throw. 2.49, that's quick. He can run an NFL offense. Not saying he's going to change life, but I think he could be a capable starter for a team that maybe he's like a Davis Mills, right? Like he was pretty good for Houston when he came in the first year. Maybe he could be a type of quarterback like that. That's why I like him. But, Hooker, I just have concern with his age and his injury, but he's talented as well. But that's kind of like my overview of the quarterback so far.
Yeah, I want to swing back to Hooker in a bit too, but Jeff, obviously come to you. We can talk about the top two quarterbacks, and their numbers are extremely similar too. I just, gave them a glance there. Again, both big time schools, Alabama, Ohio State. I believe it was Stroud was 86 total touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and Young was 87 total touchdowns, 12 interceptions. So, in big time conferences, these guys are putting up similar numbers and with similar offensive line talent in front of them and similar weapons. I will say, I think Stroud has the edge of the talent he's playing with. Marvin Harrison Jr. might end up being the best receiver prospect we've seen since Calvin Johnson. That's in 2024, though, whereas Young didn't get the play with that trio of wide receivers that Tua and Mac Jones got the play with, where all three of those guys ended up being first rounders. But, Jeff, you can talk about the top two, but also I want to get your take on Richardson. I know you placed some money on him being the number one pick. Is that more you believing in his talent, or you just think there's more chance that he's rising so high up the boards?
It is a bit of both. I am pretty high on Richardson. I've been high on him the whole time. But I do agree with Bradshaw that I do think it would probably be better to sit him and work on a few things with him. Because I think a lot of us thought that he might actually stay in Florida for another year just to work on some things because his completion percentage was below 60%. That is not very good. I do think it's just the trend we've been seeing of quarterbacks who have all that talent where he's got, I'm not going to say a Josh Allen arm, but he's got a really good arm, a very, very top tier NFL arm. And he's got great athletic talent, like 240 pounds and running like wide receiver 40 times, jumping 40 inches. Like he's a physical like monster realistically at quarterback. And I think when you look at that, like I think you just see a talent who's just, his ceiling is so much higher than the rest of these guys, like so much higher. Realistically, Levis was the guy at first, but in comparison, it's really not that close. Like, I don't really think it's that close at all. Like Levis has good talent. Don't get me wrong, but like his arm is not what Richardson is. His legs are not nearly what that is. And neither is Bryce Young's, who has also like really good scrambling ability. But it's just his polish is pretty rough. And I just think if you got the number one overall pick and you moved up to ensure that you get the guy that you want, why not take the guy with the most upside possible? Right? Like, why not? Because if not, you're going to pick in the top 10 anyway next year. And there's going to probably be another quarterback you're going to like. Like, just take the guy with the most upside. I think that makes a lot of sense, despite what I think we're all kind of saying that Richardson does have these issues that need to be worked on. I just think that's how teams probably are moving towards. But then again, I have a little bit of hesitation because we do know a lot of NFL teams are still very stuck in their own ways and are very old school and stuff. So like, do I think that he is the number one prospect? With all that being said, no, because I think his floor is so incredibly low. Like, I just think it is very, very low compared to someone like Bryce Young, who I feel like is probably going to be a starter in the NFL for years to come kind of thing. I feel like it's just a lock with him. Versus the other guys, I actually really don't have any idea. Like after Bryce Young, to me, like Stroud to me is like, I've got to be honest, I'm pretty low on him. I feel like he could just be a backup. I don't think he's going to be as bad as Justin Fields has been, but I just don't think he's got anything special there. He does get the ball out a lot quicker than Fields ever has. He does have athleticism, but he doesn't really use it. So, that really doesn't factor in. He's got an okay arm, and I think he's pretty accurate. But overall, does he blow you away? For me personally, not really. But I think him and Bryce Young are essentially, like, I'm 100% confident that those two are locks going in the top 10. I think Richardson will go as well. But I also would say too, like, with Bryce Young, the whole size concerns to me are just like, I don't care anymore, man. Like, how many times do we have to see a guy below 6 foot do well in the NFL? Like, how many times are we going to see it over and over and over again with Drew Brees, with Kyler Murray, with Russell Wilson? Like, how many times do we have to see it to the point where it's like, okay, maybe like we don't need to be so worried about like the height thing anymore. I get he's small, and also the idea, of course, that he'll break down and stuff, but it's like, looking at two of the three of those guys, both of them were basically not injury prone at all, like not at all, or like avoided getting like crunched by defenders and stuff like that. And Bryce Young does a really good job of that too. He escapes the pocket well. He creates plays with his legs, essentially, like opens things up when, he, like you mentioned, he didn't really have those incredible weapons at Alabama that past Alabama quarterbacks did. So for me, like when I look at him and all the a great throwing ability that he has, I just feel like these questions are like absolutely baffling to me. Like, it's just like, when it comes to injuries, man, I will stick by this. You ultimately don't know, like, at all. You have no idea. There's no way to measure how a guy is going to get hurt and how they're not. The only thing you can maybe say is like their playing style might attribute to a little bit more injuries, like Josh Allen, the way he's playing. I don't think we're going to see him play at the level that he's playing at 32. And I think by 35, he's going to be struggling in the NFL because I think he just takes too many hits despite how big he is. And that size won't matter. So I do just think that whole thing is crazy to me. I think like Bryce Young to me is head and shoulders above everybody in terms of all that. So like, I would not be mad at all to see him go one, but I'm just very confident that I think they're going to take the upside of Richardson. And then Levis, I guess I'll dig into him a little bit too, is just I think I see Carson Wentz. I just think maybe, I don't know. There's something about him where it just feels like it looks like he's struggling when he's playing. It just looks like nothing looks easy at all. Everything looks tough. And obviously he's not playing with the best talent, of course. I think that there's something to be said there. But, his traits aren't so crazy that I think you need to take him early. I think he's honestly a mid to late round pick. And I think that's actually the perfect spot for him where, if he does have things that are fixable, you can work on them with a team that can give him time. Maybe like a team that's, more in the kind of contendership phase of their window and everything, and just work on those things. Like, honestly, like a San Francisco. Like, I don't think that's the worst spot in the world for him. Obviously, I don't necessarily think they're going to take a quarterback, but I mean, I wouldn't be mad if they did. And then lastly, Hendon Hooker. It's kind of, I'm not comparing him to Stroud in the sense that I think Stroud's way better than him, but I also think like he's just kind of a guy that's not really anything special. And I will say too, though, the same thing with him, like this whole age thing. Like, I know he's 26. Most quarterbacks last pretty long. Most quarterbacks play like at a decent level till they're like 35. So I don't really think that him being 3 years older than the average quarterback coming into the draft is too much of a concern, to be completely honest with you. But I really don't think he should be a first round pick. I think he's a second, if you're really desperate, maybe third round pick, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, like, so I want to go back to Bryce, and that has been the only concern we've heard is the height, because everybody gets worried, about passing over the middle of the field. That's been Kyler's issue since he got into the league. That was always Russell's issue. It was Russell's biggest issue this past year, where they wanted to work the ball over the middle of the field and it wasn't happening. It was a disaster. Whereas Bryce is different because to me, he feels, when I watch him, I get more so young Russ and a mix of Joe Burrow. And I know that's two high comparisons. I don't like doing that. but the way he moves outside of the pocket, which helps his height, right? He gets, away from the 6'5", 6'6" offensive line and uses his vision downfield. And the way he throws of touch and anticipation is very Burrow-like out of LSU. And that's what I see. And I think he's a home run pick. The thing with Stroud, I got to go back and watch the tape because he has the height. He's a great pocket passer, like Luka had mentioned. Whereas I think Young has the touch and accuracy and kind of the more heads-up plays. Stroud, I think, is set in a mindset where it's 1, 2, 3, there's my top talent. 1, 2, 3, there's my top talent. And that can't necessarily be a knock on him because, right, you play with who you play with. And guess what? They recruited damn well. I want to go back and see what things he excels at compared to things he just does good, right? Because it seems like there isn't as much a knock. It's just, oh, he's good at that. He's good at that. He's good at that. Whereas what is the thing that is at the NFL level, right? I think that's Young's, touch and anticipation. Richardson has the just freak-like NFL body, right? And we kind of continue to come back to this situation, and we talked about this on a past episode of Richardson, was, everybody wants to find their Josh Allen, right? Which isn't, necessarily a possible thing. It's once in a blue moon that happens where you get a guy who looks like dog shit in his first year, and somehow you fix him and he becomes an all-pro level quarterback. That's so hard to do. They want to find a guy like Cam Newton was. We're never going to get that ever again, right? And people think there's a chance that could be with Richardson. And I agree with Bradshaw. You can't put him in a situation where it's right away, hey, you're starting. It's got to be sit behind and figure it out. And yes, he has to fix the arm. Yes, he can throw a rocket all day. Guess who could also throw a rocket all day? That was Zach Wilson, right? And now he's not going to be starting. And I was super high on Wilson. It's just not going to happen. Levis, for me, I believe it was the 2 seasons ago, Kentucky had a great year. He looked great. This past year was a disaster. The O-line was horrible. His weapons were banged up. It was just ugly. I don't get the hype with him. And I, again, it's the same thing where everyone's just gushing over this arm talent. He doesn't have the same build and pocket presence that I think Herbert did coming out of Oregon. And I know, Jeff, you weren't as high on Herbert, but I loved Herbert's arm, where there were certain throws that Herbert made that were just stupid good. And I haven't seen that from Levis. I've seen, here he heaves it 60 yards, but it's like, way downfield where his receiver makes a play on it, where it's not a back shoulder throw there where only the receiver can get it that Herbert was doing. Which brings me to Hendon Hooker, who I loved, this past college season. Again, the age thing was, bizarre, and that just happens. His numbers, absurd, right? These are his past 2 seasons. So 2021, 31 touchdowns, the passing, 3 interceptions, 9.7 yards per attempt, 68% of his passes completed. Those are fantastic. This past year, before the ACL injury, got Tennessee to the number 1 ranking, which I hadn't been in years, right? 27 passing touchdowns, 2 picks, nearly 70% of his passes completed, 9.5 yards per attempt. He, at one point, I believe he was just behind Bryce Young for the Heisman voting, and then until he got injured. I see more talent from him than I see Brandon Weeden. I don't think it's a fair comparison. I know the age thing is there. Brandon Weeden played with Justin Blackmon, who was a monster at Oklahoma State. And unfortunately, his NFL situation didn't work out in his favor, and just couldn't stay on the field. But Weeden was just throwing the ball to Blackmon and see what you can do. And his numbers went, nuclear. And that probably helped. He won Big 12 defenses, but you have teams trying to double team him and have a shadow over top of him. And then that just opened up other opportunities for Weeden to put up decent numbers. Hooker had one really good receiver in Jalen Hyatt, but it was Hyatt go find the ball too. It was a lot of perfect passes. And especially you go back to the Florida game, the Alabama game, he had unbelievable throws throughout that contest. So I'm with you, Jeff, that I wouldn't take him in the first round. I don't know whether it was Pete Prisco or Lance Zierlein who had a mock draft and had him going 5. I wouldn't do that. That's putting him in a wrong situation. But look at the team situation. I wouldn't hate if it was a late first round. What if a team like Tampa Bay needs a quarterback? Baker's not the answer. We know that, right? What if a team like Minnesota, Kirk probably can't get them to the level they're looking at. Luka, would you hate one of those teams who was not in the top 15 picks, but they do need a quarterback or somebody to succeed that quarterback that they currently have? And would you like that for maybe a Hendon Hooker type guy or a Will Levis type guy? Because we talk about these top two guys. Carolina's taking quarterback. Houston's taking quarterback. Indianapolis is likely taking quarterback unless they make a trade for Lamar Jackson. So let's say it's 1, 2, 3. Richardson being the third goes to Indianapolis. What's the spot for Will Levis, Luka?
I love the Minnesota take from you, and I was going to bring it up. I think that's a perfect situation because whatever quarterback gets drafted there isn't going to start next season. And then you're coming into a situation with a young head coach and top 2 receiver in football, best receiver in football. Like it's a great situation. I think. I think that is my biggest excitement for the draft is to see what Minnesota does because wasn't there, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 years ago they were going to take Justin Fields. I'm pretty sure I saw a report if the Bears didn't trade up. So already 2 years ago they were planning for this. Now this could be the perfect spot. With Hooker, I listen, I'm not a Levis guy, and this might be crazy to say. I think Hooker and Levis, even though I didn't in my rant, I didn't mention Hooker a lot. I think between both of them, whoever you take, I think they're both graded evenly. And it's crazy to say because people have Levis as like a top 3 guy, and nobody talks about Hooker. But if I'm a team again like Minnesota, and I'm taking a shot on the guy, I take it on Hooker. I would because listen, I know he's 25 and I know he's coming off injury concerns, but I don't know. When you watch the tape, I just think it's better. It's better than Levis, in my opinion. I just like it better. And this isn't a shit on Levis podcast here from us 3, but it's just I don't know. I do think we all just see the concerns. He reminds me of like a Sam Howell kind of guy. Like he's got a rocket arm. He was talked about as being amazing. Then Howell slipped to the 5th round. Levis isn't going to fall to the 5th round. Okay, but the concerns are there for me where I think Levis could possibly fall out of the top 10. I think it would be correct if he fell out of the top 10. I think maybe he should go to a team like you said, like a Tampa, like a team. But I don't think anybody in the league should be trading up for him either. Like it's not like if Levis falls to 8, 9, they're on the floor. We got to go. We got to jump. We got to go. I don't think that's the case. And I think it would be pretty good value if you had a guy slip like that because you never know. I mean, all these quarterbacks have NFL talent. It's all about where you go, right? You saw Brock Purdy last year. He goes to any other team in the league. Nobody's talking about this guy. Sure. But he goes to San Francisco and look what happens. You got to go to the right situation. And quarterback is the number one position where that needs to happen. You have to go to the perfect situation, in my opinion, unless you're generational, of course. So Hooker, Levis, I think if I'm Minnesota, I'm seriously considering taking one of those guys at my spot if they fall. And I might be leaning Hooker because of the upside that he can bring. And like you guys said, he doesn't get hurt. I think we're having a serious conversation of him being a top, 3, maybe 4. I think he would have been ahead of Levis. I'm serious because Richardson's combine. Okay, the combine was the combine, and he jumped, a lot of players in this draft. But I think we're having a serious conversation of him being ahead of Levis if he didn't get hurt.
That's a fair point, and I think that's what's going to be exciting is we kind of know the first couple picks are going to be chalk. It's going to be where does Levis end up and what do one of these other teams do? And Jeff, over to you. Who's a team in the first round that you think could surprise people by taking a quarterback? Like, what about a team like Tennessee, right? Ryan Tannehill hasn't gotten them where they want to be. Not, Luka, the Patriots, there was a report that came out, Mac Jones and Bill Belichick are having a little bit of beef.
Just got my jersey. It's like just throwing it down the drain.
Oh, really. No.
You can't get any jersey on New England, guys. Nobody is safe on that team. Nobody. Who do you get? It's just as crazy.
So that one would be tough. What about a team like Seattle, their second round pick, or sorry, their second pick in the first round? Like, obviously, it seems the money's there of Geno Smith. They're committed to him for a moment. But if one of these other guys comes up, right? Like, do they take a chance on him? The Giants, if somebody slips, I know they just gave Daniel Jones the payday. Like, what about them? The Saints, like, there's a lot of teams. Who is one that you would be least surprised by if they took a quarterback here, Jeff?
Least surprised by?
Correct.
Like everything that's happened, I really like the Minnesota one because I do think they might try somebody, and Levis being as volatile as he might be in this draft, I could see that happening too, and I think that would be the perfect spot for him. Actually, same thing with Richardson and Levis. I think both would be really good for Minnesota. And Tampa, I think, is an excellent one too. It's just that they're so far down. I wonder who's going to get there. Another team that is also pretty far, actually, no, a team that is not actually that far down there. I forgot they did not make the playoffs for a second there. Is the Green Bay Packers. Here's the thing, like Jordan Love, I think they know what they have. I feel like they know better than anybody. Obviously, I think they probably want to see him play again, try him out there. They drafted him first round. Why not? Right. But their roster is more of a win now type of roster. So like, I don't 100% see it because I think they could just add another piece. And I think it would be like, if free agent quarterbacks come about, then you take him, you take a piece and make that team even better. Right. But man, like, cause Hendon Hooker, who I think is more pro ready than most of these guys, man, like I think that would be like a perfect spot for him. But yeah, like, but because I just think to me, like, I think from what we have seen from Love and from everything that we've kind of heard so far, it seems like they're not that in on him. It really seems like they kind of think, you know what, he's probably not the guy. But like, I don't know. I think we should kind of keep an eye on them. I think we should maybe consider that if a proper guy falls to them, I don't think they're going to trade up. But if a guy falls to them and they just see, you know what, why not? Maybe they're a team to potentially think about. I would say, out of all the quarterback needy teams, I would say maybe them, or I kind of think Seattle won't take one in the first round. I think they will take one in this draft, but not in the first. I don't see that. I don't think with that first pick, no, I think they're going defense easily. I think that's pretty much a no-brainer to me. I don't think I don't think they would risk that, especially with, we're going to talk about, like, in the next podcast, is like the defensive talent in this draft is just insane. Like, it's just so much, and they do need help on that side of the ball. And Pete Carroll knows that's what won him a championship before. So I think that's probably where they'll go. So if it's the least likely, I'd say it's between Green Bay and Seattle.
Interesting. I know we could probably do this for another podcast, but I was talking to somebody about Green Bay and their situation. They said they wouldn't be surprised. Let's say the Rodgers deal gets done. Rodgers goes off to New York. If the Packers, just the way they are this time around, now that Rodgers is gone, they go receiver and tight end with their first two picks, and just kind of stick it to Rodgers and be like, hey, you're so talented. You should be able to take this B+ talent to a A-, and we have a C level quarterback, and we need to give him A talent to get him to where we need him to be. I thought, it kind of makes a lot of sense, and I can totally see it happening.
I mean, I think that would work, and I also think, like, when we were watching Jordan Love in his first start, I think that is something that maybe we kind of overlooked, is like the talent, like at least receiving wise, it's not that great, and I could see how a rookie quarterback would have a lot of issues with that. And I don't know, man, I also, like, I feel bad because I want to see Jordan Love play because he's talented, he seems fun, and I just think, that would be cool if they did that. I mean, for me, obviously, I think that'd be really cool. I really want to see Aaron Rodgers suffer this season. So anyway, we can make that work, I think that'd be awesome.
I hope he doesn't get traded and they start Love rot on the bench.
That would be awesome.
That is the best case scenario.
Watch him rot on the bench.
I'm going to be a Jet. Oh yeah? Okay. No, you're not. Sit on the bench. It's Jordan Love time.
it is looking more and more like that actually won't happen until like way down the line. It seems
The trade with the Jets, you're saying?
it just doesn't seem
Yes,
like
yes,
the Jets
I
are
know.
willing to give up more than for one first round pick, which I think you're committing to this deal. Well, what are you doing? But like, it seems
Unless
like it's
the
getting less and
Jets,
less likely. Yes.
unless the Jets at 13 say, you know what, we're taking a QB.
Yeah.
And we're going, screw Rodgers. We'll take the QB, release the demons from Zach Wilson and take Levis, which would probably be just as bad, I think.
Yeah.
But But this team, I think this team now is better than the team that was drafting number 2 years ago. I would think, right? The way better. So, I mean, that QB would be walking into a better situation. But yeah, it's interesting. I think Tennessee was a good show, Nolan. I think they can maybe do something. And again, when you go to Tennessee, if they keep Derrick Henry, because I know he's being shopped around a little bit, you don't really got to do a whole lot, right? It's maybe what, 15, 20 attempts a game. They do need receiver help, but you hand that ball off to Derrick Henry 30 times a game, it seems like you don't got to do a whole lot. Play action, quick throws. I think that could be a good spot too.
Well, I think it's just also, I mean, I half thought of like the Steelers for a second, but I'm like,
yeah,
you did use a first round pick on Kenny Pickett. You did like try to start him most of the year. Like I think there was people also saying like he actually did maybe a little bit better than people were.
I liked him last year. I did. He had flashes last year. I'm like, okay, this could work.
I don't think he's that bad. Like, I mean, no. I don't think anybody's hiring him because he's obviously not like a super flashy prospect or anything. And he makes some weird throws, but overall, like, he's not so bad that I think they would move on from him. The Willis one is interesting. I just feel like, I feel like you took him late for a reason. Why wouldn't you give him another year? But also is Tennessee one of those teams that's always like, we got to win. Or are they thinking tear it down? I think if you're thinking tear it down, there's no point in taking a quarterback.
The concern I have now with Willis was the fact that they were going to Josh Dobbs instead of him, which is just insane. But yeah, Tennessee's interesting. I do think the one that could cause the dominoes to fall is Arizona might be the worst team in football next year, depending when Kyler gets back. But if they're at 3, Colts are at 4, Arizona will trade back. Does Indianapolis jump up to 3 to ensure they get that third guy, or does somebody leapfrog them? What do the Raiders do? They gave Jimmy G some money, but that could that could cause another team to move up. If the Raiders are willing to go, yeah, we don't need, Levis here at 7, who moves up then? There's so much to unravel, when the draft comes around, and we got probably less than a month until that happens. But again, way more discussion to go here. We'll talk defensive players, the weapons in this draft, and of course, we'll give you our mock draft later and make sure Bradshaw's on for that one. That's Jeff. That's Luca. I'm Nolan. Cover 4 podcast. We'll see you guys soon.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Lingo Sports and Lingo News for a whole lot more just like this.